Three children look out to sea, fixated by the rhythms of the swell as it diminishes from the noisy shore to the placid table of the horizon. Well, they're obviously looking at the water, but what is it that holds their attention? It could be a romantic conceit, like the poet gazing in awe at the majesty of nature. But because they're children, we don't impute that kind of speculative heroism to them. Looking at the vastness of the ocean, they seem vulnerable. It's as if they don't know that we're looking at them. Their innocence, expressed in holding the hands of the younger boy, seems fragile, a solidarity of hope and compassion rather than strength. In fact, the narrative that Polixeni tells here is a tragic story where the three Beaumont children are abducted by a notorious serial killer, only recently behind bars, who murders them, and for a long time the only account of the event is the sentence of the title. This work is one of those linchpins in Polixeni's output, where the theme of, so in this case, lost children that she'd been working on in her series Haunted Country, suggested another theme to her. Sure enough, the work belongs to Haunted Country, where she narrated older stories of children who'd gone missing in the bush. But it already looks different and has a different theme. Instead of getting lost and maybe being found by Aboriginal trackers, these children disappear because of malice. Gone are the olive and dun colours of nature and the 19th century. The children stand out in red and yellow, contrasting against the third primary, the bright blue of the water and sky. It's a colour scheme and composition worthy of Poussin, and with a drama that wrenches you from the lyrical to the lurid. There's such a ghastly prospect that lurks disturbingly somewhere behind us as spectators. We can't see behind us, but a malevolent predator is implicitly there. Polixeni wasn't shy of tough content, but she also wasn't fond of sensationalising stranger danger, which is statistically very unlikely here in Australia. She lamented that despite minimal risk, middle-class culture discourages children from playing outdoors because it's perceived as unsafe. And so, also in bright colours, she began her next body of work along more cheerful lines, the extraordinary Games of Consequence series. In the rural backblocks, children have no enemy other than perhaps themselves. It's also a historical paradise that no longer exists, as you judge from the vintage clothing, where children played autonomously beyond the immediate control of parents. Some of the games that the kids get up to seem hazardous and potentially cruel, but what stabilises the series and offsets the fear of trauma is the use of the single figure on 5 occasions. Nothing remotely harrowing troubles their statuesque presences, their studies in a child's growing self-sufficiency. The Song to the Siren has all the self-possession of an allegorical salon painting, with its joint appeal to nature and myth, where the sirens are femme fatale, and the song that Olympia listens to in the shell, which is made by nature itself, maybe trumps the mortal lure of the sirens. Or perhaps it's just that the shell would like to seduce the sirens, and like Odysseus, Olympia gets to hear the music without being dashed on the rocks. It's a very unthreatening work. And that lone figure in the banana lounge, yes, well, Daddy has an aeroplane, is defiantly self-assured, not very friendly, like the terrain where you wouldn't last long in the heat. But that's what it takes to find your comfort out there, and the title proclaims it's miles from nowhere. And given Olympia's name, it was almost predestined that certain pictures that Polixeni would make of her daughter might be compared in some uncanny way with Manet's Olympia. Somewhere in the outback, a girl lies on a folding lounge, gazing at the spectator with defiant nonchalance. But instead of the cat, the maid and the flowers in Manet's picture, there is only the model in a period gingham dress against a backdrop of flat scrublands. The light aircraft that orients itself away from the model seems no more reassuring than a visiting grasshopper, even if it promises to connect this lass with another location. That flimsy thing would only make it to another desolate airstrip, not to Paris or Athens. But the appeal of this picture is not to reflect on geography so much as the unconscious, where we feel miles from nowhere because we're metaphysically alienated from the centre that is ourselves and our relations with others. In that sense, it doesn't matter where you are. Even in the heart of Western civilization, on classical ground, no less, the Greeks still speak of being in the middle of nowhere, στη μέση του πουθενά, because if you don't have ready contact with a community, you feel close to nothing, in the same way that Indigenous people feel close to everything, even though the location seems to whitefellas as remote. And so this girl with the chilly stare at the end of a bumpy runway in the baking heat is disturbingly uncontactable, an allegory of distance, a young goddess out of range, a fairy with wings out of reach, miles from nowhere where her fantasy wants her to be. Where the landscape in haunted country always threatened to engulf the children, it's now their playground, their property, above all their performative stage. Polixeni had once again found that magical platform, as with the scenic backdrops, that let her and Olympia find their dramatic level.